Listen to this one moment. Joe Price is describing the night Robert Wone was murdered. And right in the middle of his timeline, he changes from using past tense to present tense. Why?
I knew Victor was getting annoyed that I wasn't turning off the TV, so I turned it off and he went to sleep. The next thing that I know, I hear the chime.
In this episode, we'll follow every shift. What he says, how he says it, and what those word choices reveal about the version of events that he's presenting. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new here, what I do is look at the words spoken, and only the words spoken by the people at the heart of the story. And then I use my process of statement investigation to giving you the keys to seeing where the truth could be, where deception could be happening, and the motivations of the person talking as well. It's a process that I use with corporate clients, with investigators, and with the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. And this is episode 1 of Robert Wone's murder investigation. It's one night, there's 3 stories. Robert Wone was murdered in 2006. He was staying at a friend's house. There were 3 other people in the house at the time that Robert Wone was murdered. All 3 deny any involvement in Robert Wone's murder. They say an intruder must have broken into the house and stabbed Robert while he was in bed. But their stories, well, they're sort of incredible. Do we believe this intruder's story? I mean, it could have happened. We'll look at their words and try and work out what it is they're saying. And we'll look at them talking to the police on the night of the murder. Their first chance to tell the story, almost the first chance to tell the story, because Victor called 911 and that call is recorded. You can search for it in the archives on this channel and see what I made of Victor calling 911, the first attempt to say what had happened to Robert Wone inside the house. But we're going to break down the interviews one by one, looking at them specifically, talking about what happened when Robert was inside the house. And we're going to start with Joe Price. Joe owned the house. We're going to have a listen to what he has to say to the police and then break that down word by word. And by the way, if you're watching this, the last episode in this series, I'm going to try and pull together all 3 interviews to get a sense of what did happen, where are the contradictions, where are the things that they're talking about that are the same, and can we get any clearer to knowing what happened to Robert Wone on the night that he was murdered. If you spot anything as we go, do let me know in the comments if you can. What do you spot in the words? What doesn't hang together for you, or what does seem really logical to you based on the words that you hear? Let me know in the comments. Now, in this first excerpt, I want you to listen to the tenses that Joe uses when he's talking to the police, because in this bit we're going to listen to, he switches from talking in the past tense to talking in the present tense. And let's ask ourselves why that is.
You said tell you what I know. We have an alarm system. The alarm was not on, but it has a function where the doors chime if you open the doors, whether the alarm or not. After Robert was there, we had drinks around the, sink. Went upstairs, we showed Robert where the shower was, where the bathroom was, right down the hall. Here's your bed. We'd already made out the pull-out bed for him. We said goodnight. He said he was going to take a shower right then. It was all sticky. I went upstairs, I saw the last 5 minutes of the show, and then started watching the first 10 minutes of some other thing on Spike TV. And I knew Victor was getting annoyed that I wasn't turning off the TV, so I turned it off and he went to sleep. The next thing that I know, I hear the chime. It's 2 beeps, beep beep.
You don't know what happened until you heard the chime.
Right. I don't know what happened until I hear the chime.
So you wasn't asleep when you heard it?
I was asleep, but it wakes me up. There are 2 control units.
The
One's in our
right
bedroom.
there in your bedroom.
Yes, one's down on the first floor. So I hear that. It doesn't concern me, it wakes me up, but I hear it and I think, oh, Sarah came home. Sarah's our tenant. She lives down in the basement. She had said to us, I'm going to go to Tommy John's tonight. I might come back, I might not. She occasionally does that. They have a guest room. She'll just crash there. I thought she came home. No problem. She's very heavy. She doesn't come upstairs. I wasn't worried she's going to come find Robert and have a cow or anything. I mean, she'd just come in and go downstairs. I don't know how long it was from when I heard the chime. It was not long enough for me to go back to sleep. And I hear what is, it was yelling, but it wasn't, it was just like grunts or something.
I'm going to look at the words that he used there and pull out the bits that interest me as he's talking to the police there. Now, the first thing I notice, and this is the very first thing on the tape of the interview, is Joe saying, you said, tell you what I know. You said, tell you what I know. He's written his own question there. That's great, because he's got to choose a question that he wants to talk about, the one that he's comfortable giving an answer to. And also then, it's free form after that. He's not in any straitjacket by a question from the police, so he's going to talk about things he wants to talk about. So let's look at what it is he wants to talk about. Let's not think he's having us on because he's chosen the question. Let's use the words he says and the answer he gives to his own question to find out what's important to him. And the very first thing he says, so this must be huge priority to him, is we have an alarm system. Now, you'll get the gist of the story, which is that the alarm system has a chime on the doors. He heard the chime on the door. He thought someone else was coming in, but he's going to say later on in the interview, this must have been the intruder coming in when I heard the chime. But he's not saying, I'll tell you what I know. I heard the chime. He's saying we have an alarm system. He's setting up the story, not just telling the story that he experienced, but giving it a little bit of context, saying that we have this alarm system. The alarm was not on, but it has a function where the doors chime if you open the doors. So a lot more there in setting up the story of hearing this chime. And notice the stutters that are on there. The alarm was not on, but it has a function. So it's not very fluid here. Maybe a bit of stress telling this story, and that is why we have those stutters in there. He carries on and says, after Robert was there, we had drinks around the, sink. After Robert was there, that makes it sound like Robert left. Might just be a misspeak. We all misspeak at times in this episode. I'm sure I'll misspeak a few times. But Joe says, after Robert was there. Where and why was Robert moving after Robert was there? It does again sound like he means after Robert arrived, we had drinks around the sink. But it's not what he says. He's talking about Robert being not there when he says after Robert was there. That grabs me. We had drinks around the, sink. Then he says, went upstairs. We showed Robert where the shower was. Now, he doesn't say who went upstairs. There's no pronoun before that. There's no we went upstairs. He went upstairs. I went upstairs. It's just went upstairs. Who went upstairs and why has he jumped the pronoun there? He says, we showed Robert where the shower was. So that is we, but he doesn't say who the we is. Is that all three people in the house? Is that him and one other person in the house? He's not being precise with that. Is there a reason for that? Is he hiding something? We showed Robert where the shower was, where the bathroom was, right down the hall. Here's your bed. Now, as we go through all these interviews, and as I'm doing this, I haven't got a conclusion. I've looked at all the interviews, I've made some notes in all the interviews, but as I go through this with you, I'm going to pull out parts that I think are important around teaching us what happened that night based on the words of these guys. Showers, bathrooms play a large part in all the stories told. For some reason, I don't know why, but you can see here very quickly, very near the start of what he says, Joe is talking about showers and bathrooms. We showed Robert where the shower was, where the bathroom was, right down the hall. Here's your bed. He says, we already made the pull-out bed for him. We said goodnight. He said he was going to take a shower and go to bed. We already made the pull-out bed for him, so there was a lot of preparation made for Robert arriving. Now, that's not necessarily me going, oh my God, they prepared for Robert, something bad must have happened. I just want you to know that Robert's stay in the house was prepared for, because I think that's important. We already made the pull-out bed for him. And it's a we again. He's not taking any ownership of anything for himself here. He's doing everything with other people. We said goodnight. He said he was going to take a shower. We've got a mention of showers again. It's really important to know that Robert was going to take a shower. He was going to take a shower and go to bed. Now, the ordering there is interesting. It's not Robert said he was going to take a shower, go to bed, and then we said goodnight. Because when you say goodnight, that's when you part at the end of the evening. However, he seems to have that in a strange order. We said goodnight, which is the end, but then there's some more. He said he was going to take a shower and go to bed. He was all sticky, is the next thing Joe says. Now, in all of this, Robert's been murdered. He's been stabbed. He's dead in their house. And he really wants to get across why Robert had a shower. He was all sticky. So it's really important for Joe to say that Robert was going to take a shower and he was all sticky. That's why he was going to take a shower. It's obvious why he was going to take a shower. He was all sticky. He then says, I went upstairs. Now, this is where the tenses are going to get interesting. I went upstairs is past tense. That's what we would expect when someone is relating events from the past. They'll use past tense. I went upstairs. Don't know what he's going to say because he thinks better of that. Like, I saw the last 5 minutes of the show. I saw, past tense again, and then started watching the first 10 minutes of like some other thing on Spike TV, past tense again with started. And I knew Victor was getting annoyed. Was getting, past tense again. I knew Victor was getting annoyed that I wasn't, past tense, turning off the TV, so I turned it off and we went to sleep. The next thing I know, I hear the chime. It's 2 beeps. So the next thing I know is a jump in time. The next thing I know means that there is certainly a jump in time. Now, is that because he was asleep? And therefore, that is the next thing he knows, but he knows time passed. So this is just the next thing I know. Or is this a verbal bridge to get from one place to another and missing out a middle bit that he doesn't want to talk about? And that's why he says the next thing I know. Now, it could be that, because here we go into present tense. The next thing that I know, I hear the chime. Not the next thing that I knew. I heard the chime. It's the next thing that I know, I hear the chime. It's 2 beeps. And he's talking in present tense now. Now, why does someone use present tense to talk about an event in the past? There's a few reasons why that could be. Number one is drama. If you watch an actor telling an anecdote on a chat show, or you watch a comedian on stage telling a story, very often these things are told in present tense. Why? Present tense is more immediate. It makes you feel like you're part of the story and it heightens the drama. Incidentally, as well, the stories that actors might tell on chat shows and the stories comedians tell on stage are also lies, usually, or very lots of fabrication within them. But they do use present tense when they're talking about past events to heighten the drama. Now, Joe is here giving an interview about his friend who has been murdered in his house to the police. Maybe creating drama is not what Joe wants to do here. So is it one of the other reasons? Listen, if something is stressful and traumatic in your past, then when you recount what happened, you might be feeling like all the feelings you had at the time have come back and you're feeling them in real time. So trauma stories, we may use the present tense to talk about past events. Is that what is going on here? It would be your friend has been murdered. That would be traumatic. Or the other reason is it's a lie. And when you are lying, you're making up the story in real time at the time you're talking. You're not talking about past events. You're talking about something that's happening in your head in this moment. And so sometimes when we're doing that, we slip into present tense because we're experiencing it for the first time. So what is the reason for this slip into present tense? It happens right after the next thing I know, where I think something is being jumped over and hidden. I hear the chime. It's 2 beeps. He's asked by the detective, you don't know what happened until you heard the chime? He says, right, I don't know what happened until I hear the chime. So you wasn't sleeping when you heard the chime. He says, I was asleep, but it wakes me up. There are 2 control units, so it wakes me up is in present tense as well. The police guy says, the one that's right there in your bedroom, and he wants to talk about these control units again and really make sure that we know about these chimes and how they all work. Yeah, the ones down on the first floor. So I hear that. It doesn't concern me. Still present tense around the chimes. So I hear that. It doesn't concern me. It wakes me up. But I hear it and I think, so this is all present tense. Sarah came home. Sarah's our tenant. She lives down in the basement. She had said to us, I'm going to Tommy Johnson's, and then there's a night or something in there. It's not very clear. It might be Tommy John's night. I might come back. I might not. She occasionally does that. They have a guest room. She'll just crash there. I thought she came home, and then this is quite strange to me. No problem. She's very heavy. I'm pretty sure that's what he says, but I don't know what he means by that. Is it heavy in stature, or is it her mood, or anything like that? I don't know. She's very heavy. She doesn't come upstairs. I wasn't worried like, oh, she's going to come and find Robert and have a cow or anything. She'll just come in and go downstairs. Now, again, across the interviews, I do think Robert's visit might have been a source of tension. I mean, someone's a tenant and the landlord has a friend staying over on a pull-up bed that's sort of out the way. Why would the tenant have a cow about seeing a friend stay in the house? She won't come and find Robert and have a cow or anything. I mean, maybe frightened because she didn't know Robert was going to be there and to be startled. I guess that could be something. I don't know how long it was from when I heard the chime. It was not long enough for me to go back to sleep. And I hear, present tense again, I hear what is, it was yelling. but it wasn't. It was just like grunts or something. And now this is going to be something that I'm very interested in. The sound that Joe says he heard of what was obviously the attack on Robert. It was yelling, but it wasn't. It was just like grunts or something. It's not very clear what it was he heard. Yelling? No, it wasn't yelling. It was like grunts or something, says Joe around that. So in that first part here, lots of we in there. You know, we did lots of things, but he's not saying who exactly this we is. Then we've got that past tense, present tense thing. Past tense is before bed. When they get in bed, when they fall asleep, it's all told in past tense, which is what you would expect. Hearing the chimes and hearing the grunts and the yells is in present tense when Joe talks. And then we've got that extra detail that I'm worried about. The description of the chimes, also the shower, Robert being sticky, all the stuff around the tenant, that interests me as well. Now, let's have a look at more from Joe speaking. And here again, pay attention to the tenses once more, but also look for when he's very certain in what he says. And when he goes to vagueness, very much like he did talking about the yelling, grunting, whatever it was, look at the differences between when he's very certain and very convinced of what it is he says, and then where he is vague when he talks to the police.
But you don't know how long it was.
I don't know how long it was, but it was not. I didn't fall back to sleep. I was still awake when I heard it, and it was pretty close in time to right after I hear the chime. So Victor and I both jump out of bed. We run downstairs. There's, the stairs end at the door. I see the doors open. I see Robert is laying there. The bed cover is pulled back. He's laying there. There is blood on him. His hand was out, like one arm was out like this and one arm was like this, I think, or somewhere across his body. And there was a knife. I believe it was laying on him, on his stomach or something like that. I picked up the knife, I moved it, I lifted up his shirt, and I could clearly see there was one, puncture wound right on his belly. I lifted up his shirt a little more. There was a lot of blood on his chest. Before I touched Robert, Victor became very hysterical, and I yelled at him to go call 911. Just go do that. He ran upstairs. He got the phone. He came back down or whatever. Was on the phone with them. He handed me a towel. They were telling him to apply pressure. We were doing that. I was yelling at him about, tell him, we need an ambulance right now. We need an ambulance right now. And eventually the ambulance got there. The guys came up. They got Robert, put him on a stretcher, and the police were right after them, basically. At some point, we went downstairs. I think we were told we had to go downstairs. When I got downstairs, Dylan or somebody, it might have been one of the officers, said, I think it was Dylan, that the back door was open, or ajar, unlocked, whatever. And I looked at it right then, and in fact, the door was, a little open. It wasn't completely closed, but it was close. That's it.
So what grabbed me there in that part of it, the detective says you don't know how long it was between hearing the chimes and hearing the yelling, and Joe answers the questions there. And then he says, and it was pretty close in time, right after I hear the chime. So we've got present tense again. I hear the chime. So Victor and I both jump out of bed. Now, I think he was going to say we there. So we, and then he decides for the first time to say who went downstairs. It was Victor and I. First time we're seeing placement of Victor, and the first time we're seeing placement of Joe here. Victor and I both jump out of bed, present tense. We run downstairs, present tense again. There's, the stairs end at the door, I see the doors open. Present tense. I see Robert is laying there, present tense. The bed cover is pulled back, present tense. He's laying there. There is blood on him. All of this in present tense. So everything from him going to sleep and hearing the chime, all that, when he heard the chime, it's all been in present tense so far. Now, the most shocking thing of this story surely is running downstairs and seeing your friend lying with blood on him on the bed. But that's not the first thing he says that he saw when he comes downstairs. He says, the door's open. That's the first thing he wants us to know. The door's open and I can see through the door and Robert is laying there. This is almost like he just really wants us to know certain things around the story, i.e. the door is open. Now, the line, the cover is pulled back, is really interesting to me. Think about what this depicts. Robert is lying on the bed and there's a cover that's not on him or not fully on him for some reason. There's lots of ways you could say that. You could use the wording I've just used there, which is Robert's lying on the bed and the cover is not on him, so I can see everything. That would say to me, what I can see at the time, what I've learned is the cover is not on him. Now, who moved the cover? Well, if we knew Robert moved the cover himself, we would say something like, I see Robert is laying there, he's pushed the cover back, or he's pushed the cover away, or he's pushed the cover off of him, or something like that. If we knew Robert was the actor in that action of taking the cover away. But for that to happen, number one, we'd need to know the cover was on him in the first place and that Robert had moved it for us to use those words. The words Joe uses is, the bed cover is pulled back. That means, to use that phrase, suggests to me he would have to know, to say pulled back, the cover was on Robert at some point and that not Robert had moved it, but someone else had pulled the cover back. Because he doesn't say Robert is uncovered, he says the cover has been moved by someone. For him to use those words suggests to me he knew the cover was on him and that someone has removed that cover. Joe carries on. His hand was out, like one arm was out like this and one arm was out like this. Now we have past tense again. His hand was out, like one arm was out like this and one arm was like this. We're in the past again. I think, or somewhere across his body, there was a knife. Past tense again. I believe it was, past tense, laying on him, on his stomach, or something like that. And this is vagueness. There was a knife. I believe it was laying on him, on his stomach, or something like that. For whatever reason, what he experienced when he, in his words, ran into the room and there's his friend lying with blood and a knife. Can't remember where the knife was, but I believe it was on his stomach or something like that. Something like that could be anything, next to his stomach, or somewhere else on his body. Why is that not a detail that he really, really knows? He then says, I picked up the knife, I moved it. That's, to me, does he want us to know that he touched the knife? Does he want us to know that his fingerprints or whatever will be on the knife? And it's because he picked it up and moved it at this point when he discovered that Robert was there and looked injured. I picked up the knife, I moved it. I lifted up his shirt and I could clearly see there was one, puncture wound right on his belly. I lifted up the shirt a little more. There was a lot of blood in his chest. Before I touched Robert, Victor became very hysterical. I yelled at him to go call 911, just go and do that. He ran upstairs, he got the phone. This paragraph here is really interesting to me. Again, before I touched Robert, is this to say that, not just did I touch the knife, but Joe also wants us to know that he touched the body. Nothing suspicious in there because I was trying to help him. Is that the impression he's trying to give? And he jumps in time here. So he goes, before I touched Robert, Victor became hysterical. Now, often when people are telling fabricated versions of events, they have to jump around in time a little bit in order for what they're about to say to make sense, because they haven't introduced the detail that they meant to introduce previously. Could that be happening here? That Victor became hysterical, but I forgot to mention that because it's fabricated, because Victor didn't become hysterical. I yelled at him to go and call 911, just go and do that. He ran upstairs, he got the phone. And here I think there is some urgency for him to get across to us. We were really acting fast. As soon as we discovered that Robert was stabbed, Victor became hysterical because he just discovered it, and I told him to go and call 911 immediately. I know there's some doubt about whether they did call 911 immediately in the timelines, and it seems to me that Joe is trying to get across to us how quickly they called 911. Victor, he goes to get the phone. He came back down or whatever. Again, this vagueness here. Victor ran upstairs to get the phone, and then he came back down or whatever. Well, he came down or he didn't. There's not a very lot of whatever about that. He was on the phone with him. He handed me a towel. They were telling him to apply pressure. We were doing that. I was yelling at him, telling him, we need an ambulance right now. We need an ambulance right now. Again, this sense that he really wants to get across how urgent they found the whole situation. And, eventually the ambulance got there. The guys came up. No description that we know from the 911 call. There should have been a lot of applying towels and applying pressure. He doesn't bring that into his timeline there. They got Robert, put him on a stretcher, and the police were right after them basically. At some point we went downstairs. I think we were told we had to go downstairs, and I got downstairs. Dylan or somebody, it might have been one of the officers, said, I think it was Dylan, that the back door was open, or ajar or unlocked or whatever. What was it? Was the back door open? Ajar? Unlocked? Whatever. Someone said something about the back door, but it's not very clear what it was that was said about the back door and the state of the back door. And I looked at it right then, and the fact was the door was, a little open. It wasn't completely closed, but it was closed. I don't know how this back door was. We've got real vagueness about the state of this back door, the one the intruder supposedly came in on. And he finishes with, that's it. And that is often used by folk who don't want their story questioned. That's it. I've told you everything. Don't ask me any more questions around this, because I've shut it all down with that's it. It's quite a few red flags in that part there from Joe. And really my thoughts on that one were the past tense kicks in again during the body description. And that's when the vagueness arrives as well around so many things. Now, the next part we're going to look at from Joe, there's something called a resume statement, which is when someone is talking and maybe they feel guilty or are worried that they look guilty. So they start to bring in some statements that show what a good person they are, or something that they feel gives them some bona fides as they are talking. Is that what is happening here when Joe continues this police interview? Is he talking about, what a great guy I am? Look how intrinsically linked I am with Robert and his wider family. So therefore, you must logically conclude there's no way I could have killed him. Have a listen and see what you think. The other thing that could be there is just talking about finding a dead body in your house is extremely stressful. Talking about nicer things like your resume statement is less stressful. It's more comfortable to do, and it's easier to do as well. Let's have a listen.
When you came downstairs, you came by yourself, is that what you said?
Yeah, Victor and I ran down the stairs together.
And then what'd you see?
The door was there, it was open. There was Robert laying on the bed, the cover was pulled back.
Where's Dylan?
He was in his room. I saw him, I don't know, in this time frame, come out of his room. He I don't think he heard the chime.
You don't know?
I don't know. But, all right, I don't know. I saw him come out of the room. He was putting on a bathrobe when he came out.
So, when the officers got there, who had the robe on? You did?
No, Dylan had one on and Victor had one on. I was still in my underwear.
I see.
I know you guys have to figure everything out, but Robert's one of my oldest friends. And I went to his wedding. He was a freshman in college when I was a senior. His parents were on my college tour.
Is he homosexual?
No, not gay. Never has been. Didn't think about it. No drugs, no booze, nothing. Robert was like the best, absolutely straight A, no nonsense guy I ever met.
But he didn't. Where was his wife all this time?
What do you mean?
Well, she didn't come over with him.
No, she was at home. I saw his wife recently. I saw her on Monday. She got a new job herself. She just had hip replacement surgery, and she got a new job working right across the street from me. So she, Robert, and I all tried to go to lunch together last week, and Robert couldn't do it, but Kathy and I went.
I think I saw resume statements there. Let's go through what we saw. Okay, you came downstairs, you came by yourself, as I understand, says the detective. And Joe says, yeah, I came downstairs by myself. He says, yeah, to that. And then he says, Victor and I ran down the stairs together. So he's saying, yeah, I came by myself. And then he says, I didn't. I came down with Victor. And what did you see? Once more, he doesn't mention the body. He says the door was there. It was open. There was Robert laying on the bed. The cover was pulled back. Two important things for him there. Robert was laying on the bed. The cover was pulled back. I've already mentioned what I think of that pulled back thing, but it's interesting that he feels the need to mention this cover being pulled back again. Where was Dylan? Asks the detective. He was in his room, says Joe. I saw him, I don't know, in this time frame, come out of his room. I don't think he heard the chime. So we've got loads of stutters again. Is this something that's a bit stressful to say? Does he really want to get his words right as he talks about Dylan and Dylan's positioning? But bearing in mind that Joe has said he heard these yelling or the grunts, and also that Victor was screaming hysterically in his words, he doesn't think that Dylan heard the chime, not the screams. The screams don't get a mention. It's not, he heard all the commotion and he came out. I don't think he heard the chime is all that is there. You don't know, said the detective. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know. I saw him come out the room. He was putting on a bathrobe when he came out. Why is that important? Bathrobes seem to be really important to people here. If you know, do let me know in the comments. Bathrobes just come up time and time again, both by the people talking about the story, but also the detectives seem to have an interest in bathrobes as well. He was putting on a bathrobe when he came out. So when the officers got there, who had a robe on? Asks the detective. You did? No, Dylan had one on and Victor had one on. I was still in my underwear, says Joe. And then there's like a big long pause, which is great. You can use those silences to get people to say things, because people feel like they want to fill the silence. And what they will fill the silence with is very instructive at times, because it's like, I need to say something. What is it I want to say? And what Joe wants to say is, I know you guys have to figure everything out, but, Robert's one of my oldest friends. This is resume time. I went to his wedding, he was a freshman in college when I was a senior. His parents were on my college tour. So look how close I am to Robert. Look what good friends we are. Logically, it doesn't mean that he didn't do anything there, but is that the impression that he's wanting to get across? Is he homosexual? Asked the police guy. No, not gay, never has been. Now, you'll notice that pronouns are missing there again. No, not gay, never has been, didn't think about it. No drugs, no booze, nothing. No, he's not gay. Robert's never has been. Robert doesn't think about it. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't do booze. He doesn't add Robert into that part at all. Then he brings Robert in and says, Robert was like, the best, absolutely straight A, no nonsense guy I ever met. So when he's talking about Robert not being gay, not doing drugs, not doing booze, he doesn't actually mention Robert when he's talking about that at all. When he does talk about Robert, it's in a slightly more general sense about being a absolutely straight A, no nonsense guy. But he didn't. Where was his wife all this time? What do you mean? Says Joe. She didn't come over with him. No, she was at home. And then he goes extra. He just has to say, no, she wasn't there. But he goes and talks about, again, resume statement, how well he knows Robert's wife. I saw his wife recently. I saw her like on Monday. He's verbal diarrhea almost at this point, word salad. I saw her like on Monday. She got a new job herself. She's just had like hip replacement surgery, and she got a new job working right across the street from me. So Robert and I actually all tried to go to lunch together last week. Look how close Joe is to Robert and his wife. Therefore, nothing could have happened here. It must have been an intruder, yeah? Robert couldn't do it, but Kathy and I went. So in this part here, Dylan not hearing the chime gets me. Why was it Dylan didn't hear the chime? Why was nothing mentioned about this yelling and this screaming, which really would have got Dylan's attention, surely? And then we have these resume statements, sort of character building statements that are not asked for, but they're very detailed. They're very in depth about how well Robert is known by Joe and how well Joe knows Robert's wife as well. Robert's wife trusts me. She thinks I must be a great guy for us to go to lunch together without Robert. Real resume statements around his relationship with Robert and his wife. Right, do you ever feel that someone's holding something back or not giving you the full story? You might feel it right now. You will feel it a lot as we look through all the words of these guys. Well, listen, if you do feel that, tell me in the comments, because your intuition very often is right around words. We tend to reason it away, logic it away and go, nah, this, I'm just being picky here, or it's just someone's words. But if you notice things, let me know in the comments. You could make an appearance in the final episode when we try to tie together everything we hear from the 3 stories told about the one night, the night that Robert Wone was murdered. Listen, you're not being paranoid if you don't feel that you're getting the full story, because many people miss the clues hiding in plain sight in people's words. But you don't have to. Just subscribe to this channel and you will learn how to listen to people's words, how to be a little bit more curious about what people say and how they say it. Because every case I break down like this one will sharpen your instincts, and all of a sudden you won't feel paranoid. You will feel better informed than most people. So if you want to get the next episodes in this series, if you want to get other cases like this one, hit the subscribe or the follow button to make sure you are notified of them as soon as they drop. And by the way, do you know someone that's into this case, someone who really wants to know what happened to Robert Wone? Then do like this. That helps it get out to a load more people. Share this with others, or recommend it in your networks as well. That would be really helpful for helping this get out to more people and upskilling more people to really listen to what is being said. Let's do some more listening to Joe Price talking to the police guys now. And I want you to look here for verifiable facts, because the thing is, when you make up a story, which could be happening here, you can make up all sorts of stuff, but if it doesn't match the facts like we know them, if it doesn't match things that can't be proved elsewhere, then that story is going to fall apart very quickly. But if you can make your story match with what is known, what can be found out by other people, then all of a sudden you have a much better story to tell. Have a listen to Joe here.
And, like I said, I know Victor and Dylan better than I know my mother. There's no chance on the face of this earth that either one of them could punch someone, never mind, kill someone. It's ridiculous.
You said last week you got an email from
Robert.
Mm-hmm. And y'all had arranged that he was going to stay over your house tonight?
Yes.
And he was going to meet with the night shift?
He told me that in the email that's what he was doing, that he was going to meet the lake crew or whatever they were.
What time, do you know what time the lake crew normally comes in?
I think I have his email from today, where he emailed me again and said, I told you the wrong time or something, and he said he was meeting the people. I think the shift was 6 to 10, and in any event, he was going to go from the CLE to his office, see these folks, which he did. Continuing legal education. He was doing a federal grants CLE.
You see him tonight?
Mm-hmm. He did. He went to the CLE, which is down at 1250 H, the Washington Bar Conference Center.
When is that over?
He said it was over around 9. And then he went to the office, which is at 20th and M. Saw the folks he needed to see. Got a cab. He called me before he left the building, said, hey, I'm catching a cab right now. Took the cab.
And the reason you didn't go home is what?
He lives out in Oakton, so it's a good long drive, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
25 minutes.
Okay, it may seem odd to you. It doesn't seem weird to me.
Yeah, we've got those emails in there. That seems to be that verifiable fact. Again, this is offered by Joe. It's not been asked for by the detectives to how this part starts. Like I said, I know Victor and Dylan better than I know my mother. There's no chance on the face of this earth that either one of them could, punch someone. Never mind, kill someone. So he's given some resume statements for the others here. Not himself, and he hasn't said, I didn't do it here. He does use the word kill, though, which is not softening the severity of what happened to Robert. He's saying Robert was killed. It's kind of the first green flag I've seen in this interview from Joe, where I'm like, people who are guilty of horrible crimes tend to turn it down a little bit and maybe say, rather than I didn't kill that person, I didn't do it, I didn't attack them, I didn't hurt them, I didn't harm them. But he uses the word kill there. And then he says, it's ridiculous. Is it ridiculous? No, I don't know if it is ridiculous or not. The police guy says, and you said last week you got an email from Robert. You all had arranged that he was going to stay with you over at your house tonight. Yes, says Joe. It's a really plain, simple answer. Yes. Yes to that email arriving. I believe he did get an email arriving. And I really think that he thinks what's in the email should be shared with other people because it might go well for him. He was going to meet with the night shift, says the police guy. Yeah, that he told me that in the email, that's what he was doing, that he was going to meet the late crew or whatever they were. Do you know what time the late crew was coming in? Asked the detective. I think I have his email from today where he emailed me again and said, oh, I told you the wrong time or something. And he said he was meeting the people. He really wants to kind of show this email as if to say, look, this was a long established visit. Robert was very happy to come to mine because I've got all the emails that show it and show the timings and so on. He says, I think the shift was like 6 to 10 and in any event, he was going to go from the CLE to his office, see these folks. What's CLE? Continuing Legal Education. He was doing like a federal grant CLE. Did he see them tonight? He did, says Joe. He went to CLE, which is down at 1250H. When was that? He said it was over around 9, and then he went to the office, which is at 20th and M, saw the folks he needed to see. Got a cab. He called me before he left the building, said, hey, I'm catching a cab right now, took the cab. Now, again, something that was common across all of these interviews that we're going to look at, the 3 stories about one night, they all talk about Robert letting them know he was on the way. For some reason, we may work out what that is as we listen to those words. The police guy has some suspicions. The reason he didn't go home is what? Joe says he lives out in Oakton. So it's like a good long drive, I guess. Yeah. Now, if someone wanted to stay at your house, do you think you might have a reason from them? Yeah, you could have stayed at your house. I don't want to go home that night. It's a long drive, or I'm working late. I'd rather stay in the city. He just says he lives in Oakton. It's a good long drive. I guess, yeah. 25 minutes, says the detective. And Joe says, okay, it may seem odd to you, but it doesn't seem weird to me. Now, I don't know any other discussions that happened before this interview. However, the police guy doesn't say it's odd that this is happening. But Joe seems to want to shut off that line of questioning. So before anyone in this interview says it's odd or weird, like why would he do that? It doesn't seem any easier to me. He just goes, it may seem odd to you. It doesn't seem weird to me. So here we have those verifiable facts in evidence. I think he really wants to show this email to say this was a legit staying here, long planned by Robert. The timings were all worked out and so on. And here, he wants to protect Victor and Dylan before giving his theories. His theories are going to come next, but before he gives all these theories about what he thinks could have happened, he wants to say, I don't think Victor and Dylan could have done anything. Now, in this last part we're going to look at, I want you to look at something that he's done a few times here, which is time spent in comfort, talking about things that are really easy to talk about, like the emails or the resume statements about having lunch with Robert's wife and so on. Those are easy things to talk about, and when we're under stress, we might want to stay wallowing in the comfort of the easy things to talk about because that's much easier to do. Things that cause us stress, things we don't want to talk about, we will be certainly more stuttery about them, but we might be a lot shorter in them as well, hoping that we can just talk about them quickly and then move on to something else. See if you notice that in effect here.
And we had made plans.
Like he had to do something in the morning?
Yeah, he and I were actually going to have breakfast. The company he works for has some internet infringement problems, which is the type of work I do. So I had sent Robert some pitch materials. In fact, I had some sitting out on my kitchen counter for him. So we were going to go have breakfast tomorrow, talk about the proposal, what he had said. I don't know if it was on the phone or email. There were some things he wanted to tweak, and then he would go to his office and I'd go to mine.
Do you ever spend the night over there?
He never has. No.
Why tonight?
He was coming in, didn't want to drive out to his house and then have to come back.
So the scenario you're telling is a burglar comes in the house for the sole purpose of coming upstairs and stabbing a person who's spent half an hour in your house.
No, I don't think they knew anybody was there. All I can imagine, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. I've never been mugged. My house is never broken into. My car was broken into once.
First of all, Your house wasn't broken
It still
into.
hadn't been broken into.
So
Okay, I understand where you guys are coming from with this, but someone came in our house, took that knife.
how did
you know,
they get in?
They came through the back door.
How you know?
I heard the chime. The front door of the house was definitely locked.
And then did you hear the chime when they went out?
I did not hear it. No. Victor told me that he believes he heard the chime again. I didn't hear it.
And then this person, then what they do? Jump the fence?
Yeah, and I was sitting in the living room saying to Dylan, like, why in the hell would you jump the fence? Why wouldn't the person going out the back door go through the gate?
How do you know?
Amen. Good thinking.
Because I didn't get to go out there, but, the gate was, as far as I could tell from where I was sitting, the gate looked locked to me. The gate was not ajar.
Right. Here's the comfortable thing to talk about, the plans for the morning. He and I were actually going to have breakfast, and he talks about this in great detail. I'd sent Robert some materials. In fact, I had some sitting on my kitchen counter. He talks about this a lot. You know what he'd said, I don't know if it was in the phone or email, but there's some things he wanted to tweak. This is all probably true and really easy to talk about. The police guy says, did he ever spend the night? And it's unclear what he asks, but I think he's asking about has he spent the night at theirs before. He never has. You know, he was coming in, didn't want to drive out to his house and then have to come back. So the police guy puts it to him. So the scenario you're telling is a burglar comes in the house for the sole purpose of coming upstairs and stabbing a person who spent half an hour in your house, and he gets closed down really quickly by Joe. No, I don't think they knew anybody was there. All I can imagine in this, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. I've never been mugged. Now, he was about to give his theory out there, which might be a little bit harder if he has some guilty knowledge about what happens, and he decides not to share his theory. All I can imagine is this, and then doesn't tell us what he can imagine. Instead, he goes on to victim status. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. I've never been mugged. Interesting here, the worst things have happened to Robert. Robert has been killed that night. And Robert's family have probably had worse things, but Joe is thinking very much of himself here. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. But he really here struggles with his theory and diverts to talking about this being the worst thing that's happened to him. And he carries on away from the theory that he's abandoned telling. My house was never broken into. My car has been broken into. The detective pulls him up. First of all, your house wasn't broken into. It still hasn't been broken into. Joe says, I understand where you guys are coming from with this, but someone came in our house, took that knife. Now he's leading with the knife. Is he just going through things in chronological order? Came into our house, took the knife, stabbed Robert. But the headline of what happened is not that someone came in your house, it's that someone came in your house and killed your friend in Joe's version of events. But what he wants to say is took that knife, leading with a knife, not the killing. How did they get in, says the detective. They came through the back door. How do you know, says the detective. I heard the chime, says Joe. The front door of the house was definitely locked. And then did you hear the chime when they went out? I did not hear it, no. Victor told me that he believes he heard the chime again. I didn't hear it. Now, we have something there which is non-contracted. He doesn't say, I didn't hear it, no. He says, I did not hear it, no, which is more formal. And sometimes people who are lying will use that more formal way of talking without putting the abbreviations in, without putting the apostrophes in, to sound more convincing, to sound more authoritative, to sound like they have a little bit more power and stature. I did not hear it, no. Victor told me he believes he heard the chime again. I didn't hear it. Now, this is all a bit distant. It's not Victor thinks he heard the chime again, or even Victor heard the chime again. It's Victor told me he believes he heard the chime again. I didn't hear it. And then this person, says the police guy, and then this person, what did they do? Jump the fence? Yeah, says Joe. And I was sitting in the living room saying to Dylan, like, why and how would you jump the fence? Why wouldn't the person go out the back door, go through the gate? Amen. Good thinking. Sarcastic comment of the episode there from the police guy. Because I didn't get to go out there, but the gate was, as far as I can tell from where I was sitting, the gate was locked to me. The gate was not ajar. You can tell whether a gate is locked or closed from sitting inside the house. I don't know. So in that last part of the interview, we're going to look at the breakfast meeting, and the way he talks about the breakfast meeting is a lot more fluent than the way he talks about his theories of what he thinks happened about this person coming into the house, the intruder theory. You'll notice the intruder theory is based on assumptions that are not stated at first. The assumption that they came in the back door, that they jumped over the fence, all these assumptions that are baked into the intruder theory, but he doesn't state them when he is talking about the theory, and he doesn't seem open to any other possibilities as well. You know, for example, he seemed to be open to the fact the front door could have been opened with a key when he said the tenant could have come in, but he doesn't seem to be open to any other possibilities. So that's my breakdown of Joe Price speaking to the police on the night. And my thoughts on Joe so far: that tense shift really gets me when he moves for a large section of the timeline, the critical timeline, that when Robert was stabbed, he moves into present tense to talk about what he was doing and what he did after Robert was stabbed, whereas he's using past tense a hell of a lot elsewhere. When he said Dylan didn't hear the chime, not Dylan didn't hear the screams, or even Dylan was alerted by the screams, that really got me as well. And also, that rock solid theory gets me as well. He's so convinced of this intruder theory that he just nails it out there, and there's not very little like must have, could have, or anything like that there. He's really nailed on to that theory. Do let me know what you think of Joe Price's interview, part 1 of the 3 stories one night talking about the murder of Robert Wone. What do you think? What did you notice in what Joe says? And then remember all the things that you noticed, because as we look through the other 2 stories, we may come back to some of the things Joe says to see how these stories hang together. In episode number 2, we'll look at the words in Victor's police interview. It's very different from Joe's, but there are some similarities and there are some common themes that come up again.
Went upstairs, took a shower. Dylan was in the shower when I got home. We're having trouble with our shower in our master bedroom.
We'll look at that in episode number 2. Robert Wone, one night, 3 stories. NeverAtruerWord.com is the website, which is you can find loads more episodes looking at the words that people use, including a lot of police interviews. You'll also find my analysis of the Robert Wone murder 911 call in there. It's NeverAtruerWord.com, and we'll see you soon for episode 2 of the Robert Wone story from Never a Truer Word.